Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. So in this video, I want to do a very quick update on the chart of Bitcoin, especially as we've seen this nice correction and pullback on the chart of Bitcoin, which we expected, as you probably remember, some weeks ago. I mentioned there's a high probability of a pullback on the chart of Bitcoin, and we've seen a nice correction so far. So I want to explain to you what I think is now likely for Bitcoin in the next several weeks and months, and the key targets, which I think we could reach likely in the next several weeks and months as well. All right, guys, join me. Alright guys, welcome back. So as you probably remember in my last video, I mentioned I was in Iran. The Persian New Year is a time when Tehran gets really busy. In fact, just a few days ago, I went to Iran Mall, the largest mall in the world by area. And it was just beautiful and amazing. Iran Mall is definitely a place you want to visit if you come to Iran and Tehran. Alright guys, before we talk about the chart of Bitcoin, I want to bring my special guest here. As you probably remember in my last video,
hello everyone, I am glad to see you again, Alessio.
Okay, it's Human. As you probably remember, Human loves Bitcoin and crypto in general. A lot of people actually asked me to ask Human whether he follows some of these altcoins like Shiba Coin, which I mentioned before is garbage. But do you still follow Shiba Coin, by the way?
Yes, 100%.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's a disappointment. What about some of the other cryptos? XRP, do you follow that?
Yes, XRP.
But he mentioned to me last time his favorite altcoin was Cardano. Now we're going to talk about with Human as well where he thinks that Bitcoin is going to go, whether I agree with him as well. Before that though, let's first of all take a look at the chart of Bitcoin right now as we stand. Now, as I'm making this video today, Bitcoin, as we can see, has pulled back. Currently, as we're making this video, the price of Bitcoin is about 62 to 65K. And as you can see, the price of Bitcoin has managed to pull back to the 34 exponential moving average, a level that I like to watch on the charts. Now, in my previous video, you may recall, I mentioned there's a high danger, there's a high risk of a pullback or correction on the price of Bitcoin. In fact, I put a clip for you guys so you can watch it. Now, I should say I was expecting Bitcoin to have a strong pullback or some kind of weakness in the month of March, but we'll see because March has not yet ended. Typically, March has a tendency to be a weak month. I think given how the MACD indicator has now become extremely overbought within the same range as we were back in November 2021, should be a cautionary signal that perhaps we could see some kind of pullback or weakness or correction. So in other words, in my previous video, I mentioned because March, the month of March, is typically a weak month seasonally for Bitcoin, that typically poses a risk for Bitcoin this month. And you can see Bitcoin so far has followed through with that weakness that we see in March. Second thing is I mentioned an indicator on the chart which had reached overbought conditions, extreme overbought conditions. Do you remember, Human, which particular indicator I mentioned?
Yes, MACD.
MACD, well done, Human, absolutely. You see, guys, the MACD indicator had reached extreme overbought conditions. You can see there on the chart. That was the level it was at as I made the previous video about a week or so ago. You can see the MACD indicator had come to the same levels it was at in November 2021. At about the same time, we saw a significant correction and drop on the price of Bitcoin. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not expecting a big crash in the price of Bitcoin like we had in 2021 or 2022. No, all I was expecting was some kind of a reasonable pullback or correction in the price of Bitcoin to the averages, for example. And in fact, we've had a nice healthy correction, about 11 or 15%. So far so good. And again, guys, remember, pullbacks and corrections are healthy and normal. People often assume that corrections and pullbacks are bad things, they're dirty things. No, guys, they're actually necessary because pullbacks and corrections can give us clues as to the next likely targets, the next level that Bitcoin could go to, and also where key support is located. Let's go to that next point, by the way. I'm going to bring Human in. Do you remember the key level of support that I mentioned in my previous video?
Yes, 50K.
50K, well done, Human, yes. You see, guys, key support at 50K is very important for Bitcoin to respect and hold. In other words, it's going to be very important that in the next several weeks and months that Bitcoin stays above 50K. And here's why. Because if Bitcoin, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Bitcoin were to drop and fall below 50K, that would mean the risk would increase of a potential, what do you think I'm referring to?
Of a potential top.
Very well done, absolutely right, Human. A potential top in the price if, I'm not saying it's going to happen, in fact, I'm not expecting it, I think it's a low probability, but only if Bitcoin were to drop and close below 50K, then the risk would increase of potential top and a reversal and a likely downtrend in the price of Bitcoin. But remember, guys, I'm not expecting that. I think that's a low probability. I still think we're in an uptrend and a bull market, and I'm still expecting this uptrend in the price of Bitcoin to continue to our next upside targets. As you guys know, and as Human knows, the trend is your friend until the end, and the trend is still up as long as we hold above the key level that Human mentioned at 50K. All right, guys, so what that means is I'm still expecting one more push higher, at least another big push higher to take us into the summer period, and the next key targets for Bitcoin is, what do you think, Human?
80, 90K.
80, 90K, well done, Human, absolutely right. 80 or 90K is about the same levels I'm looking at in my charts as well as the next levels of resistance for Bitcoin to reach in the next several weeks and months. Okay, guys? And by the way, yes, I think by the end of the summer period, we could potentially reach 100K, the level we talked about with Charlie Burton. All right, guys, so I think the good news is that even though we've seen this pullback, this correction in the price of Bitcoin, which again, we're expecting, as you probably remember in my last video. So even though we've seen a nice correction and pullback, as long as Bitcoin stays above 50K, I'm still expecting a higher probability for Bitcoin to push higher in the next several weeks and months, likely into the end of the spring period, again, to the levels that Human mentioned, into the 80 to 90K levels. Those are my next key levels for Bitcoin to be reached once this correction and pullback in the price of Bitcoin is completed. And again, I think this pullback and correction in the price of Bitcoin is temporary. I think it's short term, and hopefully as long as Bitcoin stays above 50K, I'm looking for the next big push higher to our next key targets, again, the 80 to 90K levels in the next several weeks and months by the end of the spring or in the summer period. And also one more thing, I think it's quite likely that Ethereum, by the way, do you watch the chart of Ethereum too, Human?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that Ethereum also quite likely will make all-time highs, probably reaching the 5,000 levels in the next several weeks and months as well. So, and by the way, when that happens, then that should be very interesting for Ethereum and Bitcoin as well. All right, guys, so from me and Human here in Tehran, Iran, I'm going to wish you a fantastic week. Thanks very much indeed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video update. Cheers.